The sky above Kesh-9 burned without sound. Long streaks of fire crossed the clouds as orbital weapons fell again and again. The planet had once been blue and calm, with wide oceans and slow winds. Now it was broken land, black smoke, and shaking ground. Every hour felt like the last hour. Era stood inside the command shelter, her hands resting on a cracked metal table. The lights above her flickered. Each flicker meant another power failure somewhere in the city. The shelter was crowded with officers, messengers, and wounded soldiers who had nowhere else to go. The air smelled of dust, oil, and blood. She looked at the main screen. Red symbols filled it. Too many. Each symbol marked a Dominion unit moving closer to the city dome. The last defensive line had already fallen. There were no more layers left. Just the city, the civilians inside it, and a few tired soldiers standing in the way. Era's voice was calm, but her thoughts were not. Report, a young officer stepped forward. His uniform was torn at the shoulder. Western shield is gone. Power nodes destroyed. We cannot bring it back online. Another officer spoke before Ara could answer. Eastern trench is overrun. No survivors confirmed. The words hit the room like slow hammer blows. No one shouted. No one cried. They were too tired for that. The war had drained those things from them. Ara closed her eyes for a short moment. She had planned for many outcomes during this war. Defeat had always been one of them. But she had hoped it would come later, not now, not like this. A loud explosion shook the shelter. Dust fell from the ceiling. Somewhere far above, something heavy had collapsed in the medical wing below. Hannah moved from one injured soldier to the next. She no longer remembered how long she had been awake. Time had stopped making sense days ago. Her hands worked on their own, cleaning wounds, sealing burns, pressing bandages into torn flesh. A soldier grabbed her wrist weakly. "Is it over?" he asked. Hannah did not answer right away. She looked into his eyes. They were filled with fear, but also hope, small and fragile. She forced a gentle smile. "Not yet," she said. "Rest now." She moved on before he could ask more. The wounded filled every space. Beds, floors, hallways. Some were soldiers. Some were civilians who had been caught by falling debris or stray fire. Children lay next to fighters. No one complained. Pain had become normal. Outside the city dome, the Dominion advanced without pause. Their machines were tall and sharp, built for war and nothing else. They did not slow down. They did not hesitate. They had crushed world after world in the same way. Kesh-9 was only another name on a long list. Back in the command shelter, a senior council member spoke quietly. "We must consider surrender." The words spread through the room like cold air. Some officers looked away. Others stared at the floor. Era turned to face the council member. "Surrender will not save the city," she said. "The Dominion does not take prisoners." "They may spare some," the council member replied. "Some is better than none." Ara wanted to argue, but she had no facts left to fight with. Only belief. And belief was weak against numbers and weapons. A messenger rushed into the room. "New signal detected," Ara straightened. "Dominion." The messenger shook his head. "Unknown. Long-range sensors picked it up just now." The room became silent. Ara stepped closer to the screen. A new set of markers had appeared at the edge of the system. Small, fast, moving in a direct line toward Kesh-9. "Identify," she ordered. "We can't," the sensor officer said. "No match in our database? Could it be another Dominion group?" Someone asked. Ara studied the movement pattern. It was aggressive, but not like the Dominion. There was no attempt to hide, no delay, just speed. "Open a channel," Era said. Static filled the speakers. No answer. Minutes passed. Outside, the Dominion forces reached the outer wall of the city dome. The wall shook under heavy fire. Parts of it glowed red. Hannah felt the impact even in the medical wing. The lights went out. Emergency lamps flickered on, casting long shadows. A loud voice echoed through the shelter speakers. "All units, prepare for breach. This is not a drill. Hannah took a deep breath and kept working. Above the planet, space bent with sudden movement. The unknown ships burned hard, their engines bright and raw. They did not slow as they entered the battle zone. Dominion ships turned to face them, weapons charging. The first exchange was short and violent. Beams and missiles crossed empty space. One of the unknown ships took a direct hit. It did not break apart. It pushed forward in the command shelter. Alarms screamed. "They're engaging the Dominion," the sensor officer said. Disbelief in his voice. Era's heart pounded. Why? No one had an answer. A transmission cut through the noise. The signal was rough, old, and clear at the same time. A simple sound pattern repeated twice. Era frowned. That code. It's ancient. The sensor officer looked up. It's human. The word hung in the air. Humans were a story, a rumor, a species that had burned bright and then disappeared. Some believed they had destroyed themselves. Others believed they had been wiped out early in the war. Era had never believed they mattered, the transmission repeated. Then a voice followed. Calm, steady. This is Captain J of the Human Expeditionary Force. We are entering the fight. Era stared at the screen. On whose authority? She asked. The reply came without delay. Our own. Outside, the unknown ship struck hard. One Dominion cruiser exploded, breaking into glowing pieces. Another lost power and drifted on the ground. New objects fell from the sky. Not weapons. Not bombs. Pods. They hit the ground outside the city dome, cutting deep into the ruined earth. The pods opened, and figures stepped out into fire and smoke. They were small compared to Dominion machines. Soft compared to steel. But they moved without fear. Ara watched the feed from an external camera. They're landing troops, she said quietly. Someone whispered into that. The human soldiers spread out, weapons raised. Their movements were fast and simple. They did not wait for orders from the coalition. They created their own lines, pushing back Dominion units that had already reached the wall. In the medical wing, Hannah felt a strange shift. The sound of battle outside changed. The pattern was different, less one-sided. A wounded soldier laughed softly. Did you hear that? He said, Hear? What? Hannah asked. They're fighting back. Hannah paused and listened. For the first time in days, the explosions did not sound like the end. Back in command, Era leaned forward. Patch me through, she said. The screen filled with the image of a human man. His face was marked with dirt and sweat. His eyes were focused, alive. We didn't call for help, Era said. Captain J nodded once. We know. Why are you here? The answer was simple. Because you're still standing. Outside, the city wall held. For the first time since the war began, hope did not feel like a lie. The battle did not slow after the humans arrived. It changed shape. The Dominion had expected fear, panic, and collapse. Instead, they met something loud, fast, and stubborn. Era watched the external feeds with growing disbelief. Human soldiers moved between burning wrecks and broken ground, using the ruins as cover. They did not charge in straight lines. They split, circled, fell back, and struck again. Their weapons sounded rough, like thunder hitting metal, but each shot mattered. Dominion machines fell one by one. Not all of them, not even most of them, but enough to break the steady forward push. They're not retreating, an officer said. They're advancing. Ara nodded slowly. Into the breach. The city wall still glowed red in places, cracked and weak. Dominion units pressed against it, trying to force their way inside. Then the humans reached the line. Lieutenant Day moved at the front of one human group. His armor was scratched and darkened by ash. He shouted short commands, simple and sharp. His squad followed without question. They did not try to overpower the Dominion machines. They blinded sensors, cut legs, and dragged damaged units into traps. Explosions echoed close to the wall, but they were controlled, placed where they would do the most damage. Inside the city, coalition soldiers watched from firing positions. Some had not fired a weapon in hours. Now they raised their rifles again. Cover them. A coalition commander shouted. Blue and red fire crossed the battlefield together in the medical wing. Hannah felt the flow of wounded change. There were still many, but now soldiers arrived with injuries that could heal, not only with fatal wounds. She worked faster, driven by something new. Not fear. Purpose. A human soldier was brought in, carried by 2 coalition fighters. He was bleeding from his side, but conscious. Hannah knelt beside him. "Stay still," she said. He looked at her and smiled weakly. "Did we make it in time?" She paused, then nodded. "Yes, that's good," he said, and passed out. Above the planet, the fight in space grew worse. Human ships flew close to Dominion vessels, closer than safety allowed. They fired at point-blank range, and pulled away just before return fire hit. Una guided her ship through debris and flame, her hands steady on the controls. Warnings filled her display. She ignored most of them. "Target locked," she said. A Dominion escort ship tried to turn, but it was too slow. Una fired. The escort broke apart, its pieces drifting away like dead stars. "Nice shot," a voice said over the channel. Una smiled. "I know." In the command shelter, Era listened to reports come in one after another. The Dominion advance had stalled. Some units were pulling back to regroup. "They're adapting," an officer warned. "So are we," Era replied. She opened a direct channel to Captain J. His image appeared again, unchanged. Calm, even as battle raged around him. "You dropped troops without clearance," Ada said. "We didn't have time," Jay replied. "You risked them." "Yes." Ada studied his face. "Why?" Jay did not answer right away. Behind him, human soldiers moved past, carrying ammunition and wounded alike. "Because if we wait for permission," he said, "people die." The word stayed with Ara. On the ground, Sergeant Sun moved through smoke and fire as if he belonged there. He had been hit twice already, once in the arm, once in the leg. He kept going. When a Dominion unit cornered a group of civilians near a collapsed transport, Sun drew their fire and led them away. He disappeared behind a wall just before an explosion tore through the street. Minutes later, he returned, limping but alive. Coalition soldiers stared at him as if he were unreal. "You should be dead," one said. Sun shrugged. "Not today." The Dominion pushed again near the southern edge of the dome. Their largest ground unit yet stepped forward, towering over the ruins. Its weapons charged, aiming at the wall. Lieutenant Day saw it and swore. "We don't have enough firepower," someone said. Day opened a channel. "Captain, we need a distraction." "On it," Jay replied. Above, 2 human ships dove toward the giant unit. They did not try to destroy it. They flew low, fast, and loud. The Dominion unit turned its weapons upward. That was enough. Day and his squad rushed forward. Explosives struck the unit's legs. The machine stumbled, then fell, shaking the ground. Coalition forces cheered. Some for the first time in the war, in the medical wing. Hannah finally sat down for a moment. Her hands were shaking. She looked around at the wounded who now slept instead of screamed. A child tugged at her sleeve. "Are we safe?" Hannah looked toward the ceiling, where distant fighting still echoed. She answered honestly, "Not yet. But we're not alone anymore." As night fell over Keshneen, fires still burned, but the city domes stood. Dominion forces regrouped beyond the wall, uncertain. Era stood alone for a moment. Watching the battlefield, humans had not saved the war, but they had stopped the end, and that was enough to change everything. The next day did not begin with silence. It began with distant fire and low thunder from the battlefield. The Dominion had not left. They had pulled back only far enough to think. Era knew this was the most dangerous moment. The enemy that pauses is the enemy that plans. Inside the command shelter, officers moved with new energy. They were still tired, still wounded, but something had changed in their eyes. They were no longer counting minutes until defeat. They were planning hours ahead. Human officers worked beside them without ceremony. There were no long introductions. No symbols of rank mattered much here. Only clear words and fast action. Era watched Captain J speak with coalition commanders. He used simple language. He pointed, drew lines, erased them, and drew again. He listened as much as he spoke. They don't fight like us. One coalition officer said quietly to Era. No, Era replied. They fight like they expect to survive. On the ground, human patrols pushed into the ruins beyond the city wall. They did not seek full control. They sought information. They mapped Dominion movement, counted units, tested reactions. Sergeant Sun moved with one such patrol. His limp was worse now, but he ignored it. He had tied his damaged leg tight and adjusted his pace. When the patrol stopped, he took the outer position without being asked. A young coalition soldier walked beside him. Why do you do that? The soldier asked. Do what? Sun replied. Always take the edge. Sun looked out into the smoke. Because that's where danger comes from. The patrol spotted a Dominion scout unit ahead. Smaller than the main machines, faster, built to observe and report. Sun raised his hand. The group froze. They waited. The Dominion scouts passed without seeing them. Only then did Sun lower his hand. Inside the city, Hannah reorganized the medical wing. Human medics joined her, bringing new tools and methods. Some were rough. Some were unfamiliar. But they worked. Hannah watched one human medic seal a wound using a small handheld device. The burn closed cleanly. That saves time, Hannah said. The medic nodded. Time saves lives. Hannah thought about that as she returned to her patients. In orbit, Yuna's ship docked briefly with a larger human carrier. Her hands still shook from the last fight, but she did not rest long. She reviewed damage reports, fuel levels, and ammunition. Dominion fleet is repositioning, control officer told her. Toward us, Yuna asked. Toward the planet, Yuna frowned. They want to finish this. Back on the surface, the Dominion strike came faster than expected. Without warning, long-range artillery began to fall beyond the city wall. The ground shook. Dust rose into the air. Era received the report instantly. They're probing again. Captain J nodded. Let them. Let them. We need them to commit, Jay said. Then we break them. Ada hesitated, then gave the order. Human and coalition forces held their positions. They did not rush out. They did not answer every strike. They waited. The Dominion mistook this for weakness. Heavy units advanced again, supported by drones and artillery. The sky darkened with movement. Lieutenant Day watched through a cracked visor. Here they come. His squad was spread wide, hidden among rubble and trenches rebuilt. Overnight, hold, he said. The Dominion units moved. Closer. Hold. Closer still. Now. The ground exploded. Traps hidden beneath the ruined streets detonated. Tearing through Dominion legs and armor, human and coalition fire erupted from all sides. The Dominion advance faltered. Sergeant Sun dragged a wounded coalition soldier to cover as beams cut the air above them. He pressed the soldier down and returned fire without looking. You saved me yesterday, the soldier said, breathless. Sun did not look back. Save someone else tomorrow. The fight spread across the line. Dominion forces tried to regroup, but every movement met resistance. They were no longer facing a broken defense. They were facing a thinking enemy. In the sky, Yuna launched again. Human ships formed loose groups, not tight formations. They moved like hunters, not walls. A Dominion cruiser tried to break through toward the surface. Yuna cut across its path, firing into exposed systems. Another human ship joined her, then another. The cruiser's shields failed. It turned away, burning. Yuna exhaled slowly. Run, she whispered. Inside the command shelter, Era watched the Dominion lines break on her display. Not collapse. Break. Like something bent too far. They're retreating again, an officer said. Double quotes. Yes, Ara replied. But not in fear. Captain J nodded. In caution, fighting slowed by nightfall. Fires still burned, but the city stood stronger than it had in days. Hannah walked through the medical wing, checking patients. Fewer cries filled the air now. More quiet breathing. She stopped beside the human soldier she had treated earlier. He was awake. "You're still here," he said. "So are you," Hannah replied. He smiled. "Told you we'd help." Outside the dome, Dominion forces pulled farther back. For the first time since the invasion began, they built defenses instead of attacking. Era stood on a high platform and looked out across the battlefield. She understood. Now, humans were not winning by strength alone. They were winning by refusing to be predictable, and the Dominion did not know how to fight that for the first time. The enemy was learning fear. The Dominion did not retreat far. They gathered strength in the dark, beyond the broken plains. Their machines stood still for hours, lights dim, weapons quiet. To many, it looked like defeat. To Captain J, it looked like a storm pulling back before it struck. He stood with Ara on the command platform, watching the distant horizon. Fires marked the places where the last battles had burned hottest. "They are going to hit us hard," Jay said. Era nodded. "They always do." "This time will be worse," he replied. Orders went out across the city. Human and coalition units reinforced weak points. Ammunition was moved by hand when vehicles failed. Fighters slept in short shifts, leaning against walls with weapons in their arms. Hannah walked through the shelters beneath the city. Civilians were packed together, quiet, listening to the sounds above. Some prayed. Some stared at nothing. A woman took Hannah's hand. "Will they come again?" Hannah did not lie. "Yes," the woman swallowed. "Then why are you calm?" Hannah thought of the humans outside the walls, standing watch in the open ruins. "Because we are not alone," she said, just before dawn. The Dominion attack began. The sky split with light as orbital fire crashed down beyond the city. Shock waves rolled across the ground. Sensors screamed warnings too fast to read. "Multiple fronts," an officer shouted. "Air and ground," another added. Era felt the weight of it press against her chest. "All units, engage." Dominion machines surged forward, more than before. Larger, heavier, built to crush resistance in one strike. Their weapons burned through the night. Human and coalition forces met them head-on. "Lieutenant." Day ran with his squad through falling debris. The air was thick with smoke and heat. A blast threw him to the ground. He rolled, came up firing. "Keep moving," he shouted. A Dominion unit rose ahead of them, its armor glowing. Day knew they could not stop it alone. Then human rockets screamed in from the side. The unit staggered, then fell. Day looked over and saw Sergeant Sun leaning against a broken wall launcher. Smoking Sun gave a short nod and moved on. Near the city wall, the fighting turned brutal. Dominion units reached the O. Uteredge and began tearing at the structure. Pieces of the wall collapsed inward. Coalition soldiers fell back, forming new lines inside the city. Captain J moved through the chaos, giving orders, pulling wounded to safety when needed. He did not shout unless he had to. His calm spread to those around him. In the medical wing, the wounded came in waves. Hannah and the human medics worked without pause. Blood soaked the floor, power failed, and returned again and again. A human pilot was carried in, her flight suit burned and torn. Hannah recognized her face. "Una," Hannah said. Una opened one eye. "Did we stop them?" "Not yet," Hannah replied. Una smiled weakly. "Then I'll fly again." "You won't?" Hannah said firmly. "Not today." Una closed her eyes, breathing hard. Above the planet, the space battle reached its peak. Dominion capital ships pushed toward orbit control. Human ships moved to block them, outnumbered but relentless. One human ship took a direct hit and broke apart. Another slid into its place. A Dominion carrier charged its main weapon. Aiming at the city below, Captain J saw the warning and made a decision. "Redirect all fire," he ordered. "That carrier does not fire?" Human ships attacked from every angle. The carrier's shields flared and failed. Explosions tore through its hull. But it was not enough. The carrier's weapon powered up anyway. Eunice damaged. Ship drifted nearby, barely functional. Alarms screamed inside the cockpit. She looked at the carrier on her screen, looked at the city beneath it. Sorry, she whispered. She pushed her ship forward in the command shelter. Alarms spiked. Human ship accelerating, an officer said. On collision course, or his breath caught. Tell them to pull away. The message was sent. No reply came. Eunice's ship struck the Dominion carrier at full speed. The impact lit space like a second sun. The carrier's weapon died with it. Debris rained harmlessly into the upper atmosphere. On the ground, the pressure eased. Dominion units hesitated. Some pulled back. Lieutenant Day saw the shift and shouted, "Push!" Human and coalition forces surged forward together. Dominion lines broke under the sudden force. Sergeant Sun was hit again, thrown to the ground by a shockwave. He lay still for a moment. Then he moved. He pulled himself up and kept fighting. By nightfall, the Dominion attack had failed. The city was damaged. Parts of it burned. Many were dead, but the city stood. In the quiet after the battle, Era stood with Captain J once more. Smoke drifted over the ruins. You lost people today, Ara said. Jay nodded. We knew we would. Why keep fighting like this? She asked. Why give so much? Jay looked toward the city, toward the lights where civilians huddled, because someone has to stand when others cannot. He said. Hannah stood in the medical wing, exhausted beyond words. She looked at the empty space where Yuna's bed should have been. She bowed her head. Outside the city, the Dominion forces withdrew farther than before. They had learned something important. Humans would pay any price, and they would not. Stop mourning came slowly to Keshnin's smoke. Still drifted over the ruins, but the guns were silent. For the first time in many days, silence did not feel like waiting for death. It felt like breathing after a long dive. Ara stood at the edge of the command platform and watched the sun rise through broken clouds. The light touched the city dome, cracked and scarred, but still standing. Reports flowed in behind her, quieter now, slower. The Dominion has withdrawn beyond sensor range, an officer said. Era nodded. Confirm with long scan. Already done, the officer replied. They're leaving the system. The words settled over the room. No one cheered. Many simply sat down. Some closed their eyes. Captain J stepped beside Era. His armor was marked with burns and dust. He looked tired in a way that sleep could not fix. It's over here, said. For now, Ara replied. Yes, Jay agreed. For now is enough. On the ground, soldiers moved through the ruins, checking for survivors. Human and coalition units worked together without orders. Hands reached down to lift debris. Water was shared. Weapons were lowered. Lieutenant Day leaned against a broken pillar, breathing hard. His squad gathered nearby, some sitting, some standing, all silent. A coalition officer approached him. We owe you, she said. Day shook his head. We stood together. She studied his face. You didn't have to come. Day looked toward the city. Someone did. Sergeant Sun walked past, slower now, his injuries finally catching up with him. A medic tried to stop him. Sit, the medic said. Sun did. He looked around at the quiet streets. Guess we made it. The medic nodded. Looks like it. In the medical wing, Hannah cleaned her hands again and again, though there was little blood left to wash away. Beds were still full, but no new wounded arrived. She walked to a small memorial corner where personal items had been placed. A helmet. A burned patch. A pilot's badge, Yuna's badge, rested there. Hannah touched it gently. You did it, she whispered. A human medic stood beside her. She knew the risk. I know, Hannah said. That doesn't make it easier. The medic nodded. No, it never does. Above the planet, human ships held position for another day. Repairs were made. The dead were honored. Signals were sent to coalition worlds. The message was simple. Keshnin still stands. Across the sector, the news spread faster than expected. Worlds that had prepared for evacuation paused. Others sent aid ships, medical teams, and supplies. Era met with coalition leaders by secure channel. Their faces were different now, less fear. More thought, you changed the war, one leader said. Era shook her head. The humans did. Captain J stood in the background, silent. What do the humans want in return? Another leader asked. Era looked back at J. He stepped forward. Nothing, he said. The channel went quiet. That is not how alliances work, the leader replied. J's voice remained calm. We didn't come for alliance. We came because people were dying. After the call ended, Era faced him. You could ask for protection. Territory. Influence. J smiled faintly. And become what everyone fears. Era had no answer. In the days that followed, rebuilding began. Human engineers helped stabilize the city dome. Coalition workers followed human methods, simple and effective. Era walked through the streets, watching humans teach soldiers how to adapt their defenses. Short lessons. Clear rules. No pride. She stopped beside a group where Lieutenant Day explained a basic fallback pattern. You don't hold ground because it's yours, he said. You hold it because it matters. If it stops mattering, you move. Ara listened carefully. She began rewriting coalition doctrine that same night. Hannah helped organize long-term care for the wounded. Human medics shared records and techniques. They did not guard knowledge. Why give us all this? Hannah asked one of them. The medic shrugged. Someone once did it for us. As the city healed, humans prepared to leave. The idea shocked many. Coalition citizens gathered near the landing zones, watching human ships warm their engines. Era stood with Captain J one last time. You're really going? She said. Yes, J replied. Other fires are burning. You'll be remembered here, Era said. Forever. J looked uncomfortable. Remember what we did, not who we are. Era nodded slowly. The galaxy will change after this. J met her eyes. Good. Lieutenant Day boarded his transport, pausing to look back at the city. Sergeant Sun followed, limping but smiling. Think they'll manage? Sun asked. Day nodded. They already are. In the medical wing, Hannah watched the ships rise into the sky. She felt loss, but also strength. She turned back to her patients. There was still work to do. The human fleet jumped away in lines of light, leaving silence behind. Days later, Dominion signals faded across the sector. Their invasion slowed, then stopped. They had learned a hard lesson. Some battles cannot be won by fear. Some enemies do not break. On Keshnin, Ara recorded the final report. When all hope was lost, she said, humans arrived. She paused, then added, and they reminded us how to stand. The galaxy would remember. Not because humans were perfect, but because when everything was falling apart, they came anyway. The human ships did not travel far before they stopped again. Beyond Keshnin, distress signals echoed across the dark. Worlds burned quietly, one after another, sending calls that no one answered anymore. Captain J stood on the bridge of the lead ship reading the reports. Each one told the same story. The Dominion had not vanished. They had only changed direction. They avoided strong defenses and struck weak systems instead. Same pattern, Lieutenant Day said, standing nearby. His arm was in a sling, but his voice was steady. They're testing us. Yes, Jay replied. They want to see if we chase. Sergeant Sun leaned against a console. We will. Jay nodded. But not how they expect. The human fleet split into smaller groups. No grand formation. No loud announcement. Just quiet movement through known and unknown routes. On Keshnin, Era watched the tracking data with mixed emotions. The humans had saved her world, then left without asking for praise. Now they were moving again, toward danger. She opened a channel. You don't have to do this. Jay's image appeared. We do. You can't protect everyone, Ara said. Jay did not argue. No, but we can protect someone. The channel closed. Era stood in silence. Then she turned to her officers. Prepare aid convoys, she said. We're going to follow them, Coalition had learned. On a mining world called Terrell 6, Dominion forces advanced without resistance. Cities were empty. Defenses were silent. The Dominion moved deeper, confident. Then the ground exploded. Human traps tore through the first wave. Coalition fighters rose from hidden bunkers. Civilians ran through safe paths prepared days earlier. The Dominion halted. Confused from the sky, human ships dropped in fast and low. Fire struck command units first, then supply lines. Lieutenant Day led ground forces through narrow streets. "Keep them moving," he ordered. "Don't let them think." Sergeant Sun pulled a young alien child from a collapsed building and handed them to a coalition medic. "Go," he said simply. The child stared at him, then ran. The battle ended before the sun set. Word spread. Humans were not just defending, they were predicting. Hannah arrived on Terrell 6 days later with a medical team. She worked beside alien doctors who once believed humans were reckless and unstable. "They don't leave," one doctor said quietly. "They stay until the work is done." Hannah nodded. "That's how they survive." Across the sector, Dominion commanders grew cautious. Their attacks slowed. Their formations tightened. Fear had entered their calculations. Yuna's name was spoken often among human pilots. Not as a loss, but as a reminder. Her sacrifice became part of training, part of stories told before missions. "Fly smart," instructors said. "Fly brave." Remember Yuna, spent in space near a shattered moon? A Dominion fleet attempted a large strike. Human ships met them head-on this time. Captain J stood firm as weapons fired around him. "Hold line," he said. "They break first." And they did. Not because the humans had more ships, because they refused to retreat. Sergeant Sun took a direct hit during the boarding action. His suit sealed. His body did not move. Lieutenant Day reached him moments later. "Sun," he said. Sun opened his eyes. "Told you," he whispered. "Not today." Day laughed, breath shaking. "You're impossible." The Dominion fleet withdrew, leaving wreckage behind. For the first time, the coalition launched an organized counteroffensive. Era stood before a gathering of leaders, her voice clear. "We will not wait for extinction," she said. "We will move together." Human doctrine formed the base. Flexible lines. Shared command. Protect civilians first. Some resisted, most agreed. On a quiet night, Hannah sat alone, writing names into a growing record. She paused often. Steadying her hands, she did not cry. She remembered Captain J walked through the human ship halls, listening to laughter and silence mixed together. He knew the cost was rising, but so was hope. A Dominion signal finally arrived, direct and urgent. It was a request, negotiation. Jay read it twice. "They're afraid," Day said. Jay nodded. "Good." The talks were short and tense. The Dominion offered borders. Ceasefires, Control.J refused most of it. "You don't get to." "Choose who lives quietly," he said. The Dominion. Envoy ended the call without agreement, but the attacks did not resume. Weeks passed, then months. The war did not end in celebration. It ended in exhaustion. On Kesh 9, children played in rebuilt streets. Walls were stronger now. So were the people. Era watched the sky one evening as human ships passed overhead again. This time slower. Hannah worked in a hospital that no longer overflowed. Lieutenant Day trained new coalition units. Sergeant Sun finally rested. Captain J stood alone. Looking at the stars, humanity did not conquer the galaxy. It refused to let it burn, and that, more than victory, changed everything.